thanks for this day and this chance to come together and worship you. As we spend time together in your holy word, may you add your blessings to it. May you speak to us through the songs that we sing, through the scripture that we read, the word proclaimed. May you speak to us a message of hope and possibility and transformation this day. May it make it possible for us to leave here having heard you offer something into our lives. In Jesus' name. You know, I was trying to think of something that might, sort of illustrate our lives. And this is the best I could do, so I apologize for that. But the idea is, you know, we all kind of enter into this world as children, kind of, sort of like an empty vessel. And what I mean by that is not much has happened in our life yet. I mean, we've been birthed a few times, we've gotten our diaper changed, we've, been fed by mom and dad, we've been squeezed and hugged and had our picture taken, but, we don't understand a lot about life yet. I mean, life's pretty good when you're little. Oh, you might get a little colicky now and again, you might try food that you don't really like, but when you're really, really tiny, life's pretty good. Everything just seems to be, all about you. Everybody's caring for you, everybody's loving you, but what you begin to discover is that life isn't necessarily all about you, and there are things that come into our lives that, sometimes aren't always pleasant. Maybe you were 2, and mom and dad had said, don't touch those things on the walls that have holes in them. They said, don't play with them. Don't stick anything in them. But you always see mom and dad touch them. You always see mom and dad sticking things in them, and you think this has just got to be something neat and special if mom and dad are doing it. And you walk over, you stick your finger in it, and you have what we might call, for the lack of a better term, your first burden, your first bad experience, your first realization that life may not be all it's cracked up to be, because you just discover electricity real quick. And that goes into your bucket. Maybe you're, 8 or 9, and you're learning to ride a bike for the first time, and you're trying really hard, and you think you got it, and you think you got it, and you tell mom and dad you got it, and you start racing down the road, and you discover very quickly you don't got it. Maybe it's elementary school, maybe middle school, who knows, some of us are late bloomers, and you have that first crush. And you go to that young girl and you say, Elsie, you're the one for me. I want to be with you the rest of my life. I know we're only in 2nd grade, but I know you're the one. And Elsie says, I'm sorry, I like love. Maybe it's high school. And you are trying really, really hard in all your classes. And you are just struggling. And you're feeling like it just seems like no matter how hard I try, things just aren't going the way I thought they would be. Now it's time, you've graduated, you're picking your school, and your parents are thinking, yeah, that's a real big one, because how are we going to pay for it? What are we going to do? Young adulthood hits, and you're out looking for your first job, and they say, well, you've got all the credentials, but you don't got enough experience, or you've got a little bit of experience, but not the right mix of credentials, and you wonder, my bucket's getting pretty heavy and pretty full, how am I ever going to make it? You finally do find the right one, you get married, and you can't wait for all the excitement and joy that all the romantic movies and all the romantic stories that you've ever read to come to pass. I don't even make comments, you get that. Let's be honest. Children, that probably needs at least 2 or 3 themselves. Then they get older, and and then we get older, and that's kind of like the rest of the story, isn't it? I mean, you get to, I broke my glasses this week on the 4th, and I'm trying to use these over-the-counter ones, which are giving me a headache. So that's not working so good. The hair starts to fall out, the waistline expands, the hearing goes, and it's like, this is all there is to life, we wonder. And then we have to deal with the fact that maybe the inevitable is coming close. That basket that we had, that bucket of life that we had when we first started was pretty empty and pretty light and was waiting to be filled. And unfortunately, sometimes in our life, it gets filled with things that are burdensome, that weigh us down, that bind us up, that we just say like, wow, probably even down in there, even though I didn't mention, there might even be a sin or two. You know, there's times that we did what we know we shouldn't have done, and we hope nobody ever finds out. There's probably lots of other things hidden away amongst all these burdens. Some of them are similar from people to people, but some of them are specific. Well, what I want to talk to you about today is two things that relate to our burdens. One's kind of a general concept, and one's specific. The general concept is, as people of faith, we say we believe in a God who loves and cares for us and wants the best for us. We say that we believe in a God who gave us Jesus Christ to come and to set us free. And what greater time of the year to talk about freedom than that week when we're celebrating our independence. We know what freedom means. We know how hard it is to win our freedom. We know what tough work and what battles must be waged in order to be a free country. Well, sometimes it's the same way with our life because there's so much stuff there, so many burdens, so many things filling up that bucket, that basket of our life, that we have to do some hard work. And that's when we have to rely on God coming in and drawing next to us to free us. But you know, part of what Paul says in Galatians is not just about the idea that God has been part of that process, that God in His grace and mercy plays a role of transformation in our lives. God also says there are some others. In Galatians 6:2 he says, carry each other's burdens. In this way you will fulfill the law, or some translations say commandment, of Christ. Now, I want to skip down just a bit. Paul does say a little bit farther on something about, bearing your own burdens, bearing your own loads. There he's kind of talking about, well, something that we've done that we have to take responsibility for. Kind of like going to mom when you were a little kid and saying, yes, I was the last person to eat the last cookie in the cookie jar. I did it. When the officer pulls you over, you have run 3 red lights, and you have been speeding down the road, being honest with it and say, yes, it was me. Taking responsibility for those acts and deeds that truly we have to stand on our own for. There are some of those things sometimes that happen in our lives that are ours to bear. And we have to deal with the consequences and the outcomes, and they come our way. But in general, in this other verse, Paul, I believe, is talking about burdens and things that come into our lives that others can help us with. And that's part of the beauty of being part of a community of faith, is that hopefully there are people around you who will draw alongside you and help you in a time of need. And I would suggest to you a couple things that we can do to draw alongside someone to help them with these burdens that are in their lives. Right. The first one is one of those that really should go without saying. It's one we've all agreed to do. It's one that we hear over and over again, and it has to do with that idea of prayer. When we want to help someone with a burden, one of the first things that we should do is pray. Now, I know we've all had those moments when something's been going on in someone's life, and we've said, I'll pray for you. And then we promptly walked out the door and we forgot about it until the next time we see them walking down the street. We think, oh man, I forgot to pray for Bob. I better do it real quick. It happens. Life happens. If there's one statement that I wish I could wipe away from the vernacular of Christian church, it's this or one similar to it. All there is left to do is pray. To me, that kind of statement says there's no hope. To me, that kind of statement lessens the power of prayer. Prayer is meant to be something that we do first. Prayer can be one of the greatest burden-relieving tools that we have, we can offer a friend. Now, praying for someone doesn't necessarily mean it's going to eliminate the burden. It doesn't necessarily mean that what's going to come their way is, a supernatural cure or a blessing that's going to simply take away all the problems. What it may bring is, someone who's praying for them, someone who comes alongside them, something that can help alleviate some of the stress that can be there to make it easier to deal with the burden that they're caring for. But prayer should be one of those things that we are always willing to do. And I know people get hung up sometimes saying, well, I don't know what words to say, and I'm uncomfortable. It doesn't matter. Kind of like that old commercial, just do it. Just do it. Just pray. Just speak with an open and honest heart to a loving God who doesn't care whether you have the right words, who doesn't care whether you understand theology, who doesn't care whether or not you put the grammar in the right place or anything else. Just pray. Pray for your friend who's in need, and it will be a powerful tool to help eliminate and lift to someone else is probably a better way of putting it. Listening is hard work. Now I'm not talking about, listening and having someone who's having a conversation about, oh, what do you think about the weather outside, or how are the radios doing? That kind of stuff we do all the time. I'm talking about your brother and sister who comes to you, and they need to unburden themselves. And they need you to listen. Listen with your heart. Listen with your spirit. That's hard work when someone comes and says, things aren't going real well in my life right now. I've got trouble in River City. My life isn't what I thought it would be. My marriage, my kids, my job. One of the best things we can do for a person is just to listen to them. Give them a chance to talk. Give them a chance to share. Give them a chance to know that somebody really hears them. It's incredible, the feeling that you get when you know someone really hears you. That they're listening with their heart, that they're listening with their spirit, that they get it. Maybe because they've had similar experience. And I'm not talking about, counseling and advice giving and all that here. I'm simply talking about just listening. Letting that friend come. Maybe it's the first time, maybe it's the second time, maybe in some cases it's the 10th time. But letting them come. And listening. Unfortunately, sometimes we want to put a time limit on emotions, especially the ones that we're uncomfortable with. Things like sadness and mourning. Have you ever heard someone utter the thing like, Bob's been gone 6 months. Why is she still grieving? There's no time limit on grief. There's no time limit on feelings. There are things that happened 20 years ago in my life that sometimes, right in the moment, they pop back up and there they are, and it's as real as it happened yesterday. And the greatest gift someone can give me is just to listen. If you want to help somebody with their burdens, pray for them. Listen to them. Anybody ever hear this one as a kid? Sticks and stones will break my bones, but words will never hurt you. I want to tell you, whoever told you that was the first opportunity you ever were lied to with your life. Yes, it is true. If I throw a brick at you, it's going to physically hurt. But some of those hurtful things we do to people, we do with the words that we speak. Well, the opposite of that is also true. Some of the most powerful things and life-affirming things we can do for people is to speak good, positive words to them. I'm sure you remember that thing that somebody said to you 30 years ago, 50 years ago, however many years ago, and it's still right there. And if you dwell on it, it's like it just happened. That bad thing, that negative thing. Well, imagine the gift it is if we can go to someone and speak words of hope and speak words of life and positivity into their lives. Tell them how good they are, not how bad they are. Tell them what they've done right. Not the 17 things they've done wrong. Tell them how much they're loved and how special and how much we care for them. Not how mean, ugly, dirty, and this, that, or the other thing we want to label them with, or we have labeled them with when we said the wrong words. Good, positive, encouraging words make a difference in people's lives. And even later in life, something that was spoken in a negative way in the past can be countered by positive words in the present. Imagine how different the lives of a lot of our young people would be if they were raised in households where they were told, you're loved, you're special, you're cared for. You may not be perfect, but you're mine. And I love you, and I care for you. Good, positive words will lift burdens out of a person's life, unlike perhaps even anything else we might do. One of the things we can do is look for some simple, practical ways to reach out. Anybody here got a meal when they were sick, brought to their house? Anybody ever, had somebody stop by and say, hey, I know things aren't going real well right now and your husband's laid up, let me cut the grass for you, or maybe come help with the car, or be willing to go next door and put in some light bulbs with a little widow lady with the arthritic hands. Those practical ways of reaching out and helping are a way of lifting burdens. Sometimes we don't realize how much those simple, little, everyday kinds of things can make a difference in a person's life. I mean, when you're going to the hospital 5 days a week, when you're dealing with someone in your family who's a part of your life who's nearing the end of theirs, when you're caught up in a significant experience, it's not a great experience in the midst of something, somebody just stopping by and saying, hey, here's a plate of cookies. Here's a gift card. Why don't you take your family out? How about a young mom who's got their first child, who's pulling her hair out because she ain't got any grandparents living down the street that she can say, here, take the baby. How about showing up at our doorstep and saying, hey, I'll take the little one for an hour. Why don't you, go for a walk? How about the, person who's out of work, who we stop by and offer them a helping hand? Simple, practical things. Things that we can do, things that aren't going to cost us a lot, things that aren't going to, for us, it's not a big deal to cook an extra plate of food. It's not a big deal, to do a little extra favor for someone else, but can make a world of difference in someone's life. Those practical, everyday kinds of things that can, relieve somebody else's burden, can make a difference in all of their feeling, all of their experiencing. Perhaps the most important one of all is simply the gift of presence. The gift of presence. Sometimes what we really need when we're hurting the most, sometimes what we really need when our bucket is filled to the brim, is just someone who's willing to come alongside of us and, sit with us and hold our hand. Be there in the hospital room when we're not sure what's going to happen next. Being there with us in the midst of a family crisis. Just being present, not necessarily saying, doing, or having, a prayer service in the middle of the hospital, but just being there. Being present. Allowing the person to know that you care for them, and you love them, and you're there. Paul said, carry each other's burdens, and that way you fulfill the law of Christ. Fulfill the commandment of Christ. Praying for them, listening to them, speaking positive and encouraging words, helping in practical ways, being present in a time of need. All of those are ways that you and I, without any special degrees, without any special training, without, letters behind our name, can make a difference in someone else's life. Now my challenge to you this week is, how are you going to do that? There are people sitting around you in the pews right now as we gather together. You probably know their lives, backwards and forwards, frontwards and sideways, upside down. You probably know what burdens they carry. You might even know the ones that they don't share with anybody else. What are you going to do this week? What are you going to do this week? To help alleviate a burden in somebody's life. To take a little bit of the load off. To get them to the place where they feel like their bucket's a little less full. Now I know it's unrealistic that our bucket's ever going to be completely empty. That's just not reality. There's always going to be, something clanging around there somewhere. But as people of faith, what we should be doing is finding ways to fulfill the law of Christ that says, let us bear one another's burden. Find some way this week to pray for someone, to listen to someone, to speak positive and encouraging words into someone's life, to find some practical way to help, or maybe just simply just to be there in that moment in time of need. Thanks be to God. Amen.